Okay, well, my name is Dale Hayes. I'm the Chief Application Officer and VP of Development at TDCI. Brief history on myself. I come from a long history of dealing with 2D, 3D, and other types of CAD systems, graphics, things like that. Started in the early 80s, so I'm an old guy, you might say. In fact, my birthday's tomorrow. I turned 50. Not that you needed to hear that. Anyway, I'm one of the chief architects when it comes to a lot of our software applications that deal with graphics and presentation graphics, CAD, engineering, etc. So that's why I was selected to give this presentation. My presentation style tends to be fast, furious, and to the point. So I'll probably throw more at you than you're probably going to be able to consume in a brief amount of time. And that's no problem. So after the presentation, get a hold of your folks here at TDCI or myself, and I'll be happy to go deeper in any area of this. So without wasting any more time, we'll get busy here. Agenda, we're going to talk about just a couple of pieces of terminology and concepts, talk about the types of content that can be generated, really show what the system flow is from a configurator to Flex 3D, do some live demos of a heat exchanger and some simulators and different things like that. Kind of look behind the scenes or under the covers and kind of walk you through what you just saw. Talk about different types of processing options. Talk about just briefly some advanced and future capabilities, things that are going on in development with some of our customers we partner with and future versions of ByDesign. Talk about benefits and then questions and answers. Key terminology, we use the term parametric. Really, parametrics are about the ability to pass dynamic characteristics or attributes, things like height, width, depth, dimensions, etc., and use those attributes to drive the functional behavior of something. In the terms of the ByDesign configurator, what typically is passed are attributes or configurator parameters, those being the parametric parameters that drive content. Configured dynamic assembly, that's a very important thing in that what I'm going to show you is based on the concept that we haven't built this before. We've got pieces and parts, we have components, we have sub-assemblies. So consider this like the Lego concept, just like you manufacture products, where based on the customer's requirements and the unique characteristics of a configuration, we will build a dynamic 3D assembly to match those requirements, bringing in the different components and sub-assemblies to construct that assembly. That assembly may have never been built before. It may be a complete unique combination. Dynamic content, once we've created that to order or to configure assembly, then all types of different outputs can be generated. You've got 3D outputs, you've got rendered outputs, 2D drawings, bill of material information, basically all the things that you could do manually with the 3D CAD application, we can drive from Flex 3D and from the configurator. We can also do some very advanced things, which I won't get too deep into, but what I call hybrid bill of material generation, where we actually dynamically allow the configurator to query the 3D model and build a dynamic M-BOM on the fly. And that's what that's all about. And I won't get deep into it, but if you're interested in E-BOMs and M-BOMs and all the gory details thereof, we do some very unique things in Flex 3D that have a lot to do with productivity and ensuring that we put basically the right product does the right job to create the M-BOMs and reduce the amount of work on the CAD side or on the configurator side. What can be generated as outputs, a la content. Once you've got the assembly, then you can create quote, order, and manufacturing drawings, detailed drawings, all those types of things. Again, 3D rendered outputs. These names mean things to people in CAD. STL is a stereolithography format. 3ds is 3D Studio. You got ASYS, quite a few different things. E-BOMs, etc. Marketing content, we've got customers that use Flex 3D because they need to produce catalogs and other types of content, and they need the images and the drawings or the views and all those things from their product line in order to create those electronic catalogs. And you can save a tremendous amount of manpower in manual work by allowing automation to drive these things. Manufacturing outputs makes a lot of sense if I've got a fully engineered product assembly to be able to create E-BOMs and M-BOMs and then allow the configurator to interact with that assembly and do routings, part number generation, manufacturing assemblies, all those types of things. Here's a system flow. Now this isn't the only system flow in the world, but it gives a pretty good kind of a running walkthrough. Starting at the top is kind of the process flow, and on the first swim lane, the second swim lane kind of shows some of the products being plugged in. Create a quote or a bid. At that point, by design channel sales is doing its job. At some point, you're configuring a line item or a product. At that point, the by design configurator is executing. Now it can directly talk to Flex 3D, the automation engine, which talks to third-party CAD products. I won't talk about the translation engine right now, but directly driven from the configurator, Flex 3D can create all kinds of outputs as noted on the bottom. So some people do it during quoting or configuration. Sometimes other companies don't worry about running Flex 3D until something's converted from a quote to an order, because maybe they're using it to drive manufacturing outputs, CNC code, detailed drawings for manufacturing, etc. So another place that the configurator in Flex 3D might be plugged in is more on the back end to service the organization. In other words, to help you produce the product. In that case, on the back end, again, Flex 3D is used, creates the 3D assemblies, probably more as manufactured than as quoted, and again, drives a set of outputs. So there's different places that Flex 3D can be plugged into the overall interest to manufacture process. Going to get right into a demo. The demo is basically a heat exchanger, and when you see it, it'll make some sense, but essentially heat exchangers have a series of, it's called a plate exchanger. It's an actual product where you have different types of fluids that can come in, different plate counts, different types of inputs and outputs. But the bottom line is its goal is to move heat from a cool side to a hot side or vice versa, and process some fluids. Then I'm going to jump into a by design simulator to kind of walk through what I've shown you, a little bit on reviewing the content, talk about a Flex translator, etc. So bear with me a second. I've got to fire up a virtual machine here or bring it back up, so I got to jump out of this demo for a moment. Platform I'm running on. Basically, I'm running on a portable. It's not exactly a rocket ship. It's a 2-year-old portable. I'm running a virtual PC session on top of it. So from a performance perspective, you surely wouldn't call this a rocket ship. But it does a pretty good job of showing how all this works. I've got the Pro Engineer sitting up here running. Got the by design configurator 6.0 sitting here. So essentially we're going to configure what's known as a braze pack or a heat exchanger. Okay, we can do a config now. We've got a heat exchanger sitting here, and we've got a set of questions. Typical things like type of model. It's got dimensions, lengths, widths, and things like that. I'm going to wait for it to catch up here. Okay, now you can see the questions. And essentially there's a whole set of configuration rules that walk through the configuration of a heat exchanger. In a heat exchanger, the typical things that someone would be changing are the number of plates, but that drives the cooling. So, or heat exchange process, I'm going to change the plates to 15. I'm going to then place nozzles on it. I'm going to put a front nozzle and a back nozzle, or 2 front nozzles, I mean. There's also mounting options for tab mounts, things like that. I'm going to use 2 tabs. And now it's asking me, it's running what's known as a configured component because it knows I'm adding nozzles. So it says, well, what type of nozzle? Got NPT, socket welds, straight through or straight thread, etc. So I'm going to pick an NPT. Different sizes. So behind the scenes there's an option list tied to NPT. So I'll just pick a 1-inch NPT. Looks like on the second nozzle, I'm also going to pick a 1-inch NPT. Configuration's running behind the scenes. Wait for the screen to refresh. It's kind of a delayed reaction here over GoToMeeting. At this point, we've got Flex 2D doing a basic drawing to show you. We've got 2 nozzles on it.